Okay, this is my very unsophisticated way of reading a children's book. This was suggested that I do this. Oh, I forgot to plug it in. This was suggested, and whoever suggested it, I am now ready to slap them because this has taken on a longer ordeal than I thought. I've forgotten how long this book is. And I was just on another page a minute ago trying to get my friends to chime in and tell me if this looked right. And no, it was crooked again. I know there's got to be a way of doing this where it's long ways like this, but I can't figure it out. Oh, I better turn my iPad down. Anyway, I can't figure it out. It is, well, let me turn all the apparatuses off. I don't know how to turn this off. Maybe just turn it down. Anyway, I'm getting started. Everybody's chiming in. And I hope you're not sideways. I know, but I wish I could get the longer way like that. But anyway, hi, Misty. Hello. Paula Zachary, Ruth, Wanda Wallace. Lord, girl, have we known each other for some years. How did you do in the storm? Oh, my necklaces are all tangled up. I know there were terrible storms here, but not nearly as bad as they were in other places. Hello in Keyport, New Jersey. Gosh, how are you guys doing? I hear some of you up there in the northeast area might be going back to work. Is that right? Anyway, yeah, this is the ADD in me. I have to get all this straight or I can't concentrate. I don't know why. Now Stephanie's over here. Stephanie, honey, you and I got to get a life, don't you? Let's unlock your selfie editing potential. Somebody's trying to sell me something right now. I don't know how to do it. Okay, got it all untangled. Look, this one is my name in Hebrew. That was a birthday present. This one was a birthday present from one of my dearest friends, Lynn. It means infinity, which means she will love me for infinity, I think. And then this one is for my manager, Mr. T, and his wife, Roseanne. I wear all those to remind me that people love me. Do you do things to remind yourself that people love you? You should. On days like this when you're feeling so completely alone like me, wrestling with technology. I hate technology. And many of you have sent me wonderful emails with ideas of programs to download. And you're sending it to the wrong person. I don't know how to do any of that. And I'm really, to tell you the truth, not interested. I plan to go back to work. And the sooner the better, because I'm going to start throwing televisions and technology off the top floor of this penthouse apartment. Hello, Connie from Ashland City. Oh, you're just right down the road. All right, we're going to start and finish up Tales from the Ark. I love this book because my husband and I wrote it together. Hello, Irene from New York. I hope you're doing well and staying safe. But somebody just finished with Mark Lowry. Well, pardon me. Anyway, Tales from the Ark. I love this book. I think you can find it, I heard lately, on Amazon, maybe eBay, because it came out in the year 2000, so it's 20 years old. But it was fun to write with my husband, and it's very wordy. I had no idea when I started this I would still be reading it. But let's take a real quick recap. We've learned about Abraham the polar bear who followed the voice of God all the way to the ark. We learned about Jehoshaphat the yak. Isn't he cute? We learned about, oh look, there he is talking to the hippo because he thought there was a hole in the bottom of the ark, but it really wasn't. It was there. Look at that tear. It was there for the hippo to lay in there so he'd stay cool in the water. Isn't it funny how God has all the details when we don't think he does? I love that. And here's Gideon the beaver who couldn't sleep because, do you remember? Because of this guy snoring all the time. The camel, and so the beaver who thought he had no gifts to use, he did have gifts. And he made a snore box. And he put his nose, look, he put the camel's nose in there. So No one would hear the snoring. Then we learned about Moses the ferret, who lost his wife Zipporah, remember? And he ran everywhere to find her. And he finally did. Let's see. And there they are together. Look, Moses and Zipporah there. The ferrets. Then we learned about these guys. Deborah, the zebra. That was a good one. Let's see, look. And she helped the goose get the gorilla out of the way. And how did they do it? Do you remember? The goose? The goose bumped him in the butt. I don't know if we're allowed to say butt, but it just did. We all have one. Okay, chapter 6. That's what we're on now. And the name of it is, Looks Like the Goo's on You, Hyena. This is about a laughing hyena. And what do you think that is on his nose? See it? That's what we're going to find out. And it's kind of funny. I remember this story now. I haven't read it in a long time. So cozy up. Probably have your PJs on. I'll be having mine on as soon as this is over, because this technology is exhausting. Okay, are we ready? Since Haman the Hyena first set Paul on the ark, he had endured one simple problem, a problem that seemed to grow with each passing day, a problem that filtered through his mind as an ever-present and ever-elusive as the birds were. Because the problem was the birds. The finches, the blue jays, the turtle doves, they are all driving him batty. And even though there were plenty of things for a laughing hyena to laugh about on the ark, such as the day that the hippo almost tipped over and squashed him, or the time that the giraffe knocked his noggin on a rafter, just the way these birds seem to be redecorating the whole ark with their plops. Do you know what the plops are? Poop. The hyena felt something from above and land on the end of his nose. Ew. Sure enough, there at the end of his nose was the latest sign of another flying creature. He cleaned himself up with some straw as always, and as he did so, he made a plan to end this mess that the birds were making once and for all. Meanwhile, on the bottom deck of the ark, not far from the polar bears, and while everyone else was asleep, Esther the ostrich was trying to fly. She stood in a large open area, raised her one leg and flapped her heavy wings, and even though she never lifted up off the floor, even the tiniest little bit, below the dark ark, she almost believed she could. Haman's plan was brilliant, at least he thought so. First, he would gather all the birds together in their flocks and coveys and gaggles. Then he would invite them all to a get-together at the polar bear's place. Everyone loved going to the polar bear's place, and Haman was certain that they wouldn't mind a little company. And while they were gone, he would take some of the black goo that Noah and his sons were always using, you know, that stuff that seemed to stick everywhere, and he would rub down the floor, and he'd take some fresh breadcrumbs and sprinkle them all around. And then when the birds came down to eat the breadcrumbs, their tiny little feet would stick to the floor, and they wouldn't be able to fly. And if they couldn't fly, then they wouldn't be able to, decorate the ark. He laughed at his plan, but then again, he laughed at almost everything, because he was a laughing hyena after all. Isn't this fun? Look, there's the ostrich trying to fly. Ostriches don't fly very well, do they? And here's the goop that Noah and his sons kept using on the ark. His plan might have worked, except that he shared it with someone who didn't think it was all that clever. Now let me get this straight, said Esther the ostrich, who was on her way to the polar bear's place when the hyena stopped her. So every bird on the ark will get stuck in that goo? That's right, laughed Haman. Our little feathered friends will be grounded, flightless, no more flying, no more bombing, he laughed, and no more pooping. Good plan, don't you think? The ostrich thought about this and nodded and said, as a matter of fact, it's a brilliant plan. Thanks for sharing it with me. The hyena shrugged and said, don't mention it. I figured us big guys are getting tired of those little things flapping around, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I understand, said Esther. And another reason I told you about this plan is that I could use your help. Help from me? Said the ostrich. How could I possibly help? Haman nodded and stepped closer to Esther and said, you see, I found some of that black goo stuff in some jars. Yes? Yes, only the jars, they're up on the shelf too high for me to reach. Well, I saw you walking this way, and I said to myself, now there is someone who could reach the top shelf if she had to. Am I right? Well, I do have a pretty good view from up here, Esther said. Then if you don't mind, said the hyena, perhaps you could pass one of those jars down to me, and I'll get started with my plan. Haman tipped his head in the direction of some of the jars up high. You mean one of these jars? Esther asked, nudging one of the pots with her beak. Oh yeah, but be careful. Those things are heavy and they could fall. Just when Haman noticed something about the big animal he was talking to, he hadn't noticed that, with a big surprise in his voice and pointing to Esther's wings, he noticed those feathers, all those feathers. The ostrich flapped and stood up on her tiptoes, coming as close to flying as she ever could. And with her beak, she nudged one of those jars too far, just like a hyena had warned her about. The jar toppled over the edge and crashed to the floor, splattering black goo all over the bewildered hyena. What a mess! That is a mess. All that black goo. Here they are talking about their plan. Look at that. Look at that poopy on his nose and that ostrich. So they went for the jars and it fell and got all over him. Splattered goo all over the hyena. He rubbed 2 holes in his eyes and looked up at the giant bird through his new sleek black coat. You're one of them, aren't you? He said. Esther flapped her wings and said, I most definitely am. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some family to visit. So the ostrich took up with the birds, because she's a bird. She took up for him. The polar bears live this way, right? And Esther sort of flapped as she walked, almost as if she were flying. I can't wait to see my cousin, the blue jay, and my cousin, the owl, and my cousin, the turtle dove, and my cousin. And Esther disappeared, naming all the members of her family, who would often fly down to visit with them on rainy nights. Haman plopped down into a black, gooey puddle. Disappointed by his plan that had failed, still he couldn't help himself. Pretty soon, he just started laughing. Not that anything was especially funny, but only because he's a laughing hyena after all. For a long time, the hyena just laid there feeling stickier and stickier, thinking things couldn't get much worse. That is, until one day when a very strong skunk showed up. He was planning to do something mean to all those birds. But look what happened when you plot against people. It sometimes comes back to haunt you. He's sitting in all that yucky tar. All right, one more chapter and then we're going to stop. But we've got several chapters to go. This will be our last week with Tales from the Ark. There is one called Tales from the Manger, and it's kind of cute. And then I have a children's book called Twinkle. I think I might read Twinkle next, even though it's kind of a Christmas story. It's really fun. All right, this is one of my favorite chapters. Are you ready? Tales from the Ark. Samson, the super strong skunk. Look at Samson. He's a skunk. with his precious hair. I've been looking for a Samson in my life. Okay, ready? Here we go. Samson the Super Strong Skunk, Chapter 7. Sometimes Samson the Skunk was too strong for his own good. He was very proud of his sleek black coat, but he was most proud of the wide white streak down the middle, as white as the fur on the polar bears. He was always quick to point out to everyone that he met. It was the sight of his white stripe that often put fear into the hearts of those closest to him. And what caused most of the trouble on this particular day? Well, on a lazy, rainy day, Samson liked to have fun chasing the elephants from one side of the ark to the other, just because he could. He'd sneak up on one of the giant animals and tickle their leg with his tail. At first, the elephant would giggle or snort until he would look down and see that it was Samson. Then with a big trumpet blast, the elephant would bolt from his stall and move as far away as he could. Samson would just laugh and waddle on over to visit with the yak. The same thing would happen over and over again. This little skunk could move them all, well, except for the hippos, only because they slept the whole time. No animal was too big for Samson to move. Yes, Samson was a very strong one, and everyone on the ark knew it. And most of all, Samson was very glad that everyone knew it. Sounds like he has a little bit of pride, doesn't he? Then one day, Samson met a fox named Delilah. Now, Delilah was very aware of Samson's strength, and she didn't like it at all, mainly because she'd nearly gotten trampled one day. She'd been visiting the polar bears, and the little skunk and the elephants, and the rhinos, yaks racing on one side of the ark or the other. So on this particular day, she cornered Samson and said, "For such a little guy, you sure do make things happen around here. What is your secret?" But Samson just laughed and said, "No time to talk right now. I got a buffalo to budge. See ya." And he was gone just like that. Delilah didn't have to listen too hard to hear the sounds of a stampede coming from below. Samson was at it again. The next day, Delilah met Samson while he was resting. "Tell me, Samson," she began, "all those big animals from here to there, loud, noisy, nasty, how do you do it?" Samson, feeling in a little talkative mood that day, just grinned and curled his black and white tail about his nose and said, "Well, it's in the hair. It's in the stripe." "The stripe?" "Yep. You seen anybody else with a stripe like mine?" And Delilah thought for a minute. "Well, I saw the zebra." "Nope, too many stripes," Samson said. "Just one big stripe, that's what matters." "What a statement," asked the fox. "You better move," the skunk said with a laugh. "Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a nap. And I have some bears to relocate later." So the skunk curled himself up in a corner, wrapped his long white and black tail about his head, and began to snooze. That's when Delilah called out her friends, the groundhog, the raccoon, the aardvarks, the dingoes, and everyone else who lived with the fear of being squished when Samson riled up the bigger animals. Quietly, they surrounded Samson. "So what do we do?" they said. Delilah said, who was as sly as Samson was strong, looked around the area, and quick as a fox, she ran from here to there and back again, bringing a bucket clutched between her teeth. "I vais quitte voir." I don't know what that is. Maybe someone speaks French. I can't believe. I bet my husband I'm sure he wrote that, because I don't know what he's trying to say. I think that's funny. "What?" said everybody. Delilah set down the bucket of black goo that Noah and his sons were there using all the time, dabbing here and there, and said more clearly, "I say we get rid of the stripe. Look, Look at them sneaking up on Samson. They found out where his strength was. There's the sly fox, Delilah, the raccoon. There's Samson asleep. Look, they're putting that black tar on the skunk. Delilah set the bucket down of black goo that Noah and his sons were using all the time. Carefully, with paws and claws full of the black goo, the animals began covering the sleeping skunk until the stripe disappeared. And Samson might have passed for nothing more than a mink or an otter or a ferret, anything but a skunk. And the goo was so icky and sticky that it would take a flood to wash all of that off. When Samson woke up, he made his routine trip at the bottom level and waddled from one big animal to the next, but nothing happened. No one was afraid of him anymore. The moose wouldn't move. The walrus wouldn't waddle. The camels wouldn't even cringe. He couldn't even get a squeak from the mice. Whatever strength that Samson had before was all now gone. He was puzzled until he happened to glance over his shoulder. His stripe had disappeared. Blinded by his own sadness, Samson figured he had some explaining to do, especially to God. He leaned against the giant leg of one of the elephants and said in a weak voice, God, I know I've been a bit selfish and very prideful about my strength, my stripe, and the whole smelly skunk thing. Okay, I've been a lot selfish and prideful. I was thinking right and, well, about that time. Hey, called the elephant. Who's down there? Samson said, it's just me. Me who? It's Samson the skunk. With those words, the mighty elephant began to tremble. Samson felt the animal's massive legs quake as if they could no longer hold his body. What he didn't know was the elephants had a plan of their own that if he should ever show up again. With a careful and steady aim, Miss Elephant blasted Samson with enough water to bathe him for a year. Especially since he couldn't take any more baths, the force of the spray tumbled Samson into the open where Mr. Elephant's turn to do the same. Each of the giant animals took turns hosing Samson down from one side of the ark to the other, and the water crashed upon the little skunk's head and back from back again for a long time. When the elephants were all watered out, Samson rolled to his feet, shook himself dry, took one look at his tail, and waddled away. He was happy. Funny thing about that goo, he thought. It might be sticky, but with enough water, it all washed right off. I guess that's why Noah keeps so much of it on hand. So with the line of wet footprints trailing behind him, Samson returned home, washed clean, and carrying his big, beautiful, strong stripe of a tail on his back. Thank you, God, Samson said in a big, strong voice. Samson realized, before it was too late, that God had given him the gift of strength, but he should use it wisely and not tease the other animals, not use it for frightening large animals on the ark. But what Samson didn't know was that he wasn't the most feared creature on the ark. Wonder who that is. That's a good story, isn't it? You ever known bullies? Look, that's Samson. He was being a big bully till the elephants, look, almost drowned him, spraying on him. And they got all that goo off of him because they were hiding his striped tail. I think that's a good story. Look, that's why everybody was afraid of him, was that striped tail. Stinking. Bullies are no fun. Sometimes you just stay away from them, and God usually always takes care of things, doesn't he? All right, tomorrow night we'll do chapter 8, Goliath the Flea, itches for a fight. That's going to be a good one. Goliath the Flea. You never think about fleas and insects on the ark, do you? But you guess they were, and dogs and cats and all of them. Those are the tales from the ark. We're going to finish it up later. I hope you're all doing well, being good for your mom and dad. Shout out to Cooper, to Julie, Beth, and James. Can't wait to see y'all. Nessa, if you're watching, I hope to see you soon. And let's see, John, Michael, and Jackson, my great nephews. They're so smart, so pretty. I mean, that's pretty. I guess you're not supposed to say that about boys, are you? They're such handsome boys. Good to see you all. Hope you're doing good. I think this is going to be over soon. So don't lose heart. Just do some fun things with your family. And be good for your parents, would you? All right, love you. Have a good night.